This is Jason from MainstreamGeek.com, and you're listening to the Mainstream Geek Podcast for February 17th, 2016. What's going on, guys? Back from the break we had. As I explained in the last episode, I had to take the weekend off from recording. I had a busy weekend this past weekend, so there was no episode on Monday, but I did release a episode where we reviewed Deadpool on my other podcast, Completely Straight. So if you haven't listened to that, it's on both my feed and Completely Straight's feed. So check it out either way. That was Monday's episode. Some housekeeping right off the top here, as usual. This past week, we made it to number 7 in the iTunes New and Noteworthy section, which is great. That's really high for a podcast as small as mine. But there are 3 things that are important in staying in that section. Subscriptions, which I'm assuming that if you're listening to this, you're already a subscriber. If not, please make sure that you are subscribed to help with that number. It's also based on downloads, which we have plenty of to keep us in that section. Those numbers could always be better, but to make them better, share this show with a friend. Make sure that other people are finding it if you enjoy it. But the big thing, the thing that matters most, are ratings and reviews. If you haven't left a rating or a review yet, please be sure that you have done so. I know that this is a hard thing to get people to do, so I'm super stoked about everyone who has left kind words on iTunes. But if you haven't yet, please take a few seconds and help me grow the show. That would be a huge help. And that is all I have for housekeeping for this Wednesday episode. So let's just jump straight into the news this week. Right off the top, and I know at this point I'm pretty much beating a dead horse with this topic, but it's a news story that's a pretty big one, or a pretty big rumor if you don't want to go as far as to classify it as a news story. And I'm not going to kill a huge part of the show talking about this like I always do, but it does warrant some coverage because it's kind of been a topic that we've been touching on a lot in past episodes. The story I'm talking about is the story where the Warner Brothers DC films as a series, the whole Batman v Superman leading into Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, the Green Lantern Corps, all of those, they may be in trouble. Like I've been saying since episode 1 or 2, I think it is, that they have all of these movies planned out and without having any warrant to do so. And it turns out that they may be in trouble because now that people have begun to see the film, the movie is imminent at this point. It's about a month away. So the movie is imminent. So people are starting to see the movie, and those people are executives at Warner Brothers. And the reaction that Warner Brothers is getting is not what they hoped for, I guess is a nice way of putting it. People are walking out saying it's disjointed, that it doesn't seem like it's able to go anywhere from where it's being left off at. Again, these are all executives that are saying this stuff, but it is something that's putting some worry into Warner Brothers' mind. So much, in fact, that it's being reported that the series that they have planned out leading up to 2020 with all of the movies may have to be shifted around again. I called this one, by the way. You can't plan movies out that far. I'd be surprised if this doesn't happen to Marvel. You just can't plan movies that far out that are pretty much based upon a whim at this point, and the assumption that these movies are going to do well without any proven track record. And that's especially dangerous here in the DC universe because there hasn't been a movie. I know Man of Steel was technically one of these movies, but they made that movie without knowing they were going to start this whole Marvel copycat universe where they had an expanded universe of heroes. It turns out that they might actually be looking to lose Zack Snyder after this altogether. And Zack Snyder was supposed to start working on the Justice League here, I think in the next years when they're supposed to start filming that, because it comes out in 2017. So actually, they might have been planning on starting to film that in the next few months. I don't know. I don't want to look that up right now because I have so much going on my screen. But I'm almost positive that they would start filming here within the next few months in order to reach the 2017 release date that they had. Instead, they're going to push Justice League back and start replacing those films with a new Batman trilogy starring Ben Affleck. The Ben Affleck Batman being one of the only good things that people are saying there is about Batman v Superman. And him, and I guess Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor is pretty remarkable in the movie also. So, but everything else is pretty much, they're saying, and this is not confirmed, but the rumors are that they're saying that everything else in the movie is pretty much trash at this point. What is the deal with this franchise? Why can't they get it right? Now that the movie is imminent and we have proof of what it is, that people can see, that it's tangible, we keep having these instances where they're taking 2 steps forward with the franchise, but then taking 5 steps back. And it's really just adding more and more doubt in my mind as to what to expect. I'm going to go see the movie, but really at this point, I'm just going to expect to see a train wreck. And the studio's in a super hard place at this point because they have this commitment they put out there, this slate of movies for that they announce to the world that if this movie is bad, they can't really move forward with any confidence because no one's going to buy into it. And it's going to hurt everything overall. It's going to hurt the Marvel movies because, like I've said in the past, the general public doesn't know that a DC movie is different than a Marvel movie. I went and saw Deadpool this past weekend, and even people I'm friends with that are somewhat in the know, because the Marvel logo was at the beginning of the movie, thought that Deadpool was part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's not. It's part of Fox's branch of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It doesn't link up with this at all. So even people that are in the know are sometimes confused as to what these movies are and where they lie. So if Batman v Superman does bad in March, well, it's going to leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth about how what's the next one's coming out? Civil War is going to do in May, which is is it May 6th when Civil War comes out? Yeah, it's May 6th. So March 25th is less than a month and a half away from the release date of Civil War. So that bad taste that Batman v Superman is going to leave in people's mouths if it's bad. Again, this is all just a rumor out there at this point, and even if it's true, it is just what studio execs are saying. But if it is bad, it's going to hurt how well Captain America Civil War does. Meaning that Captain America Civil War doing badly is going to affect, they're already shooting Doctor Strange, so it won't affect that one. But the next one's going to be Guardians of the Galaxy. Oh, they're already shooting that one too, so it's not going to affect that one. But the one following that, I don't have the schedule fresh in my head right now. But I think the one after, I am not going to say what I think that is because I'm not 100% in my head about that. So, but whatever follows Guardians of the Galaxy, whatever hasn't started shooting yet that's next up on Marvel's slate, that one will be hurt by the studio saying, well, we have to change some things. And it's going to turn into this whole thing where the studio starts interfering with what the creators can do and take away the greatness of the Marvel movies, all because people are disappointed by Batman v Superman. This is actually really troubling news to me because I just know the snowball effect that's going to come if this movie is bad. I hope to God it's good because I want everything to keep coming. But every time I bring this movie up, I feel like I'm saying how I think it's bad, but this is making me think it's good. But it really does seem like it's going to be bad. I hope this movie is at least okay in the public's eyes. And it's going to be a hard one to do because with Batman v Superman, they're pretty much trying to pull off the Avengers right out of the gate without the setup movies, without the way that Marvel did Thor and Incredible Hulk and Iron Man and Captain America right up front to show you, hey, here are these characters, and then bring them all together. Batman v Superman is just trying to start out with basically the Avengers and then start doing those follow-up movies to support the larger movie, which I've thought since the beginning that was a mistake. Would it have been so bad to make this movie, to make Batman v Superman, let it stand on its own and see how people take it in before you announced all of these other movies, making you have to shove as much into Batman v Superman as you could so that people could see what's coming? Why they should have just made Batman v Superman, made it a genuine Batman v Superman movie, and not worried about adding Aquaman or Wonder Woman. She's going to be a big part of it. I think The Flash is supposed to be in it also, but they should have just had Batman v Superman. I've been saying this for so long, I know I'm just going on and on about it, but it's just such a mistake that they did it this way. And I'm not surprised that we're getting rumblings of how this is turning out to be a bad movie at this point. As for now, both Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman are set to hold their release dates, but that's just because Suicide Squad's already in the can. It has been for months now. It comes out in August, but it's been done for a while. Wonder Woman is, I think, almost done filming. It's been filming for a couple months at this point. So they can't really change anything about that. And if they don't release that, then they had just used up I'm sure it's $150 million budget for nothing if they don't release it on time. So they kind of have to stick with that. But as to if they're going to continue with the plan they originally laid out, or move over to the Batman movies like has been suggested, that's yet to be seen. I wouldn't be surprised if the guys at Warner Brothers weren't getting cold feet and have just decided that, Batman's always a hit for us no matter what. Let's jump into that and make a new trilogy and just rework this DC Universe franchise as needed. But really, even though executives and rumors are coming out saying that this is a bad movie, it really all comes down to how much money it makes at the box office. Take the 2015 version of Fantastic Four. No matter how bad it was, and we all know that it was bad. I hated it, you hated it, your grandma who hasn't even seen it hated it. It was universally panned by audiences and critics. It was just a bad movie. But the same movie, under the same circumstances, say people for some reason just went out to see it in droves, and it made $500 million at the box office on a $120 million budget, there's no way they wouldn't have made a sequel. In fact, Fox, before the movie even came out, announced that there was going to be a sequel to come out July 17th, 2017. So we know this to be a fact. There was going to be a Fantastic Four sequel. Speaking of which, actually, let's get off this Batman v Superman train, because we're always talking about this fucking movie, and I pretty much said this news story for what it is. The execs at Warner Brothers saw the movie, and they're concerned about the franchise as a whole now. So we don't have to continue with that. We're going to have plenty of Batman v Superman news to talk about over the next month leading up to it coming out. So let's just move on to something a little more entertaining here, because I just feel like I'm just going on and on about this movie every week. Is it good? Is it bad? I think it's okay this week. I think it's bad this week. It's tiring to talk about. Let's jump onto this thing about this Fantastic Four release date that has apparently been taken by Deadpool. Deadpool Part 2. We all knew we weren't getting a Fantastic Four sequel at this point because it was so bad. The last one was so bad. I'm sure that they're going to let the rights to Fantastic Four go back to Marvel after this. And I don't even know if Marvel wants to deal with it, because there have been so many bad Fantastic Four movies at this point that it's just going to hurt their brand. They don't need the Fantastic Four. Who the fuck even cares about the Fantastic Four in this day and age? But Deadpool came out this weekend, and it absolutely killed it at the box office. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to pull it up just for accuracy. Deadpool brought in, on a $60 million budget, which, by the way, they cut off $7 million of that $60 million like a month into production. So they had to retool the script. And so it's a real surprise that this low-budget movie came out as great as it did, considering all the hurdles they had to jump over in the making. But on that $60 million budget, in the first weekend, domestically, it opened to $132.75 million. So they made their money back twice over, just in that first week. And here's a list of all of the records that Deadpool broke in its first weekend. Number one opening weekend ever in Fox history with the $132.75 million. Number one opening for an R-rated movie ever. Number one February opening weekend. Number one winter opening weekend ever. I thought Star Wars had the number one winter opening. When does winter start? Does winter start like December 21st? So is it technically not a winter opening for Star Wars? Because I think Star Wars was a winter movie. So I don't really get that stat, actually. So if any of you have any clarification on that, please let me know. But I'm a little confused by that one. Deadpool's also listed as the number 2 opening weekend ever for an original Marvel property, which I don't get how that's breaking a record. That's not breaking any record. That's just falling in line for number 2. And it's the number 5 opening weekend ever for a Marvel movie, which they need to stop doing that, because that's where people are getting confused. They're calling this a Marvel movie. It's not a Marvel movie because it doesn't fall in the Marvel universe. It's an X-Men movie. They should call it an X-Men movie. All of this for a property that the studio didn't even want to make in the first place until fans coerced the studio into doing it. They were so against making this movie that they gave an action movie a budget of $60 million. And if that seems like a lot of money to you, just keep this in mind. A typical superhero movie starting off a film series has around, I think it's like $120 million for the first in a series. $60 million is more along the lines of what they get to make a series like Daredevil. I'm sure that Daredevil's budget was around, maybe a little less than that, but probably around the $60 million mark to make 13 full episodes of Daredevil without the crazy special effects that a movie would normally get, or the crazy set pieces that a movie would normally get. So studio heads quite often don't know what they're talking about when it comes to what fans want. And you can't blame them, really, because them making a bad call on what's going to be successful and how they want to run the studio can cost them their jobs. One bad movie can make a studio exec lose their job. So I can't really blame them, but they need to have more faith in the creators, because it seems like with movies where you have more faith in creators to create something new and original, like the Guardians of the Galaxy or Deadpool is a great example. It seems like when you do that, you get these great products that, since they're good, people will go and see and you'll make your money back. But when you have a lot of studio intervention, you get the Fantastic Four, and we saw how that went. So maybe they don't know what they're talking about with Batman v Superman, actually. Maybe it's fine and they're just freaking out about how money's being spent because it's actually close to game time. In a month, they'll know if this series of films that they're planning on making is going to be successful or fail. I will say this about Deadpool and its budget. If nothing else, it proves that you can make a superhero movie for fairly cheap and still have it come out extremely well. Studios can now make superhero movies without worrying about if they're going to make $1 billion to make it worth it. If you want to hear my full thoughts on Deadpool, we did a full review episode on my other podcast, Completely Straight. I posted that review on this feed, but you should go check it out over there and show that show some love too. There is a thought that occurred to me that didn't occur to me while I was recording that, though. And it's stupid and it's small, but we live in this world where the Huffington Post and Jezebel are websites that just love to call, like, rape on everything. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff that they have good points about, but there's a lot of stuff that when you read it, you're like, come on. What's the point in making a big deal about this subtext in a TV show being anti-feminist or blah, 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 blah. It just gets a little tiring and it makes it hard to take serious. But I haven't seen this anywhere else, and it popped in my head, and I wanted to know what you guys thought about it. In Deadpool, there's a scene, and they're going through their year of sex. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen the movie, this movie doesn't have a lot of spoilers to it. So this could technically be considered a spoiler, but it's not really. But in that year of sex, there's a scene where Vanessa, his girlfriend, puts on a strap-on, and they're going to have sex with it. And right before it, he says, no. Like he changed his mind, but she does it anyway. She sticks it in his asshole. And after I was sitting down and thinking about the movie after seeing it, it popped in my head that had the roles been reversed to where they were having sex, and it was a jokey scene, don't get me wrong, but if it was a jokey scene and the roles were reversed, if a man in that joking way had still had sex with a woman, there would be outrage all over the internet. I just think that's a interesting thing, that there is no outrage over a man being raped in the ass, but if it were to happen to a woman, say, then there would be nothing but angry mobs with torches outside Fox Studios. Just a little thought I had. Not a big deal. I don't care. Didn't offend me. No one else should be offended by it. I just had that interesting thought, and I wanted to put it out there into the world. What else do we have going on this week before I get into The Walking Dead? We had a trailer for Ghostbusters come out this weekend. Why is this a thing these days? Why do we have trailers for trailers? Why can't the trailer just be... Like, the trailer for the trailer is a surprise, and people are like, oh, wow. But why can't the trailer just be the surprise? Why can't you just give us the full nugget all at one time, instead of saying, be ready for this? I guess it builds hype. Don't get me wrong, I understand why they're doing it, but it's just becoming this, like, cliche that the Hollywood marketing machine is doing that I just don't understand. I don't need a 10-second trailer saying that you're getting a trailer on March 3rd, which is when I think the Ghostbusters trailer is going to be revealed. I'm sure there's some sort of business metric out there that proves that this boosts awareness of the movie, but is it needed? I mean, it's just silly. With YouTube, if something's out there that's worth finding, and the Ghostbusters trailer is going to be something that people are going to want to find, then it's going to be out there. But I'm going to get a little bit hypocritical here, because this weekend also another teaser trailer was released for a trailer. It was done by Netflix. It was done on Sunday. It was the announcement trailer for the trailer for Daredevil Season 2. And, you know, I still feel like they could have done without the announcement trailer, just drop the other trailer. But it wasn't for... It came out Sunday. It announced that the next day there would be a Daredevil Season 2 trailer. It didn't announce for 3 weeks down the road to get ready for this trailer. They were just saying, make sure you're glued to the internet tomorrow, because at some point this is going to drop. And I'm hyped. I was hooked before, but now I am hyped about it. I was a little concerned about season 2 of Daredevil before, because they had to put it together so fast because they didn't know the first season was going to be such a hit that people were going to want more so quickly. And even though they announced pretty early on that Punisher was going to be a part of season 2, I was kind of worried that it would be more focused on the second round of between Fisk and Daredevil than it would be focused on advancing the story at all. I just didn't want them to rehash a bunch of stuff that didn't need to be there. But it doesn't look that way now that we've got a closer look at the situation. It looks like, from this new trailer that came out on Monday, the Punisher will be the main focus of Season 2. And it seems like it's going to be about that classic comic book storyline where Daredevil and Punisher are both crime fighters, but they have two very different styles, where Daredevil's more about stopping crime and leaving them for the cops, but Punisher's all about killing them, taking them out, punishing them. Hence his name, Punisher. Which is something that we knew, but it looks like that's going to be the main focus of what this season is going to be, rather than using this season to have a small plot that introduces the Punisher to get his own show down the line. And John Barenthal, is that how you say his name? Barenthal? But he looks awesome. He feels awesome as the Punisher. They set him up with the classic Punisher story where his family is killed by gangsters or somebody. They don't say gangsters, but it's insinuated that it's gangsters in the trailer. And that sends him off in the deep end, where he becomes a vigilante, and it just seems like we're getting the real meat of the actual Punisher story, and they're following pretty close to that. Well, and that remains to be seen if any of what I'm thinking from this trailer is going to be true, but it looks that way. And at the end of the trailer, they said that there's going to be another trailer that seems like it's going to be focused on Elektra. This one comes out February 25th, I think is what it said, but this trailer seems like it's going to be focused on Elektra, so I still feel like we might get a little bit of a touch of what happened with Wilson Fisk, because in the comic books, Elektra's introduced because she might have been introduced differently, but I think Elektra's introduced by Wilson Fisk hiring her as an assassin to kill Daredevil from prison. And Wilson Fisk is in prison, as we know when we left him in season 1. So I feel like we might get a little touch of Wilson Fisk to let us know that, but I don't feel like that's going to be the main focus. Again, I could be wrong, I don't know, but I am super hyped about this season. I'm totally going to be reviewing Daredevil, but I'm just not sure yet as to how you guys would like it or what would be best for you. I was thinking of a couple of ways. Binge watching it after every, say, 3 episodes or so, stopping to record an episode that talks about those 3 episodes and releasing those over the course of a week or 2, or just watching the whole season and just do one long review of the show. I would appreciate some feedback on this so I know how you guys like to consume these. I don't want to do too much work just to find out you guys wanted it the other way, so any feedback on this would be greatly appreciated. But while we're on TV reviews, let's jump into my review of the mid-season premiere of The Walking Dead to close this one out. And this is going to get a bit spoilery, so if you don't want things ruined because you haven't seen it yet, but you plan on watching it, but you wouldn't mind hearing me talk about it, turn this episode off right now and come back when you're ready. I'll give you a second. Ready? I'm seriously going to fuck things up for you here, so make sure it's paused. So The Walking Dead Season 6 Part B, or whatever, premiered Sunday night, and we all know my thoughts on the show as a whole. If you're interested in hearing those, but you didn't listen to that episode, it's from February 12th, I think is what the date of the episode, where I talked about my feelings on Walking Dead as a whole, as a kind of a precursor to this review. So go back and listen to that. We all know that my thoughts were that this show is not the greatest. But that being said, I have to say that the mid-season premiere for this was pretty amazing. It was pretty fantastic for what it was. I mean, for being The Walking Dead, I watched it and I was like, oh wow, they're actually doing something, which isn't, compared to any other show, it didn't do much. But for The Walking Dead, the bar is set so low for me that this one actually seemed pretty good. It was a lot like the comic book, which is something that the show desperately needs. I've never understood why they strayed so far away from the source material, which is awesome for this show. I felt like the characters that needed to die died in the way that they needed to die. The right beats of action usually happened in places that I felt like they should have happened. It was a solid episode. I would give it, in Walking Dead terms, not in general TV terms, but in Walking Dead terms, I would give this one a solid... in Walking Dead terms, I'd give this a 10. It's probably one of the best, if not the best, episodes of The Walking Dead. It's in the top 5, at least, of Walking Dead, which is not necessarily a hard category to fall into. So I'll break this down for you and give you my thoughts as I go, and then we'll close out the episode. We're running a bit long, I know, but I didn't give you an episode on Monday, so this is to kind of make up for that. So it starts out with Daryl, Abraham, and what's the black chick's name? Sasha. Daryl, Abraham, and Sasha. It's that clip that's been all over the internet for the past few months where they run into Negan's crew on the road, but we never find out what happens in the actual clip. So they give us the actual rundown of what's going on with that, and then it continues from there. And they send Daryl back with one of their guys to search their vehicle, which is a gas tanker. Keep that in mind because that comes into play. It's that gas tanker that Daryl found out in the woods when he was stranded last season. But keep that in mind because the gas tanker part of this comes into play later in the episode. They go back and search the entire vehicle for weapons because they want to confiscate all of their weapons. And the rest of the gang has Abraham and Sasha in front of the vehicle, and they have. I don't want to say. I actually don't understand the escalation of this. Besides the fact that maybe these guys are just psychopaths. He tells them that they're part of Negan's gang, and so that kind of teases Negan. Which, by the way, I never known if his name was pronounced Negan or Negan. It's spelled Negan, Negan. But I've also always said in my own head his name was Negan. So that's an interesting thing about him. But we now know his name is Negan. But he toys with them a little bit. He points guns at him and then he says, I'm going to kill you. There's a little bit more flair to it than that. But that's basically what he says. He tells him he's going to kill him. And right before he shoots him, all of a sudden the entire gang just explodes. And as soon as I saw the explosion, I was like, holy shit. Because I knew exactly what had happened. I knew that Daryl blasted them with a rocket launcher that they had before. Which surprised the shit out of me because the entire break I assumed that the way that the people inside Alexandria were going to get out of the mess that they were in was with that rocket launcher. And I didn't, and I wasn't wrong about that, but I'll get into that at the appropriate part of the review. But I saw that and I was like, oh shit, they used the rocket. That was already against what I was assuming was going to happen. So I was kind of happy and surprised that it wasn't going to be so paint by the numbers like the show usually is. And then they start heading back to Alexandria. Then, we go through the credit scene like we always do. And we open up with a little recap of where everyone is, which I thought was really nice because it's been about 3 months since The Walking Dead has been on. I think it's been 2 or 3 months since The Walking Dead has been on. And in that time, you can forget where things in the story were, how the pieces were lying on the board. So they give us a nice little refresher of where everyone was in the story at that point. You had Rick's group who is walking out of the house that we saw at the end of the last season. The end of last half season. In Rick's group, you have, I think there was Carl, Michonne, Judith, the priest, I forget his name at the moment. You had the little shithead kid. You had the older shithead kid. I think his name starts with an R. Maybe it's Ron. I think his name is Ron. And then you had the shithead kid's mom, their hot mom. What's her name? Jessie. So you had that group, and they were walking out of the house, and their plan was to make it back to the quarry where all of these zombies came from, get the vehicles that were left there, and then round them up and get them away from the settlement again. And then you had the group that Morgan was in, and it had Eugene, and it had Rosita, and they were still in the room where the wolf character was being held while Morgan was keeping him there in secret. Then you have the group with the wolf and Denise being the new doctor in town, and the wolf who had just kidnapped her. And they're out running around. And there's something that's weird about this one. It was raining where they were, which is just, this town is a quarter mile square, maybe a mile square if they're lucky. But it was raining where they were, but it wasn't raining anywhere else. It was sunny skies for everyone else. Did I miss something there? Because there's a lot of environmental changes that don't make sense in this. I'll get to that in a minute. But you had Denise and the wolf together, and they were hiding in like a little stoop from the zombies, trying to plan out where they're going. And then you had Glenn and Enid in a church trying to come up with a plan to save Maggie. Glenn had her searching through Bibles to find guns, which I don't understand why he would assume there would be guns in Bibles. I know he said people hide things in times where they're desperate, but that church was inside the town of Alexandria. I'm pretty sure they would have cataloged and inventoried everything that was in the church at that point. They'd been there for like a while. And I think that was all of the groups that we had going on at that point. If not, I'm sure it'll come up in my little stream of consciousness I have going on here. But I think that was all of the groups that we had going on. But then we cut back to Rick's group, and the first problem appears, for me at least, and it goes back to that environmental thing that I was talking about. What is the environment they're working with? Because this show goes from daytime to nighttime like that. Like, it is, all of a sudden, it's the middle of the night. And all that Rick's group was doing was walking maybe 100 yards from the house to the fence. They're still inside of the walls of the city when it's just all of a sudden nighttime. So I'm kind of confused by that. If anybody can clear that up for me, I would be glad to acknowledge that I was wrong. But I think that was just a fuck up in the planning and the shooting schedule, along with the rain that was going on with the Wolf and Denise. So that was the first problem that kind of got me there. But as they're walking through the darkness that appeared out of nowhere, the little shithead kid freaks out. I can't remember his name, but you know who I'm talking about. It's the little kid that Carol always gave a hard time to. But he starts freaking out about the zombies, or the walkers, as they call them in the show. And they just grab him and start eating, which causes Jessie to freak out and start getting bit. But she has a hold of Carl's hand, and she's freaking out and tensed up as they're eating her, so she won't let go of Carl. She's kind of like locked his arm in. So Rick has to come up and chop Jessie's arm off. This is like a scene directly from the comic books, if you've ever read the comic books. But Rick has to come up and chop the bitch's arm off just to like get Carl free from her. And then Ron, or whatever his name is he just had it, who is Jessie's son. He just had it with Rick because Rick is the reason his dad died, or he blames Rick at least for being the reason his dad dies. Now he's the reason that his whole family's dead except for him. So he picks up Carl's gun off the ground from where they fall over, points it at Rick to get ready to kill him, but then Michonne just comes up and runs him through with her sword, like straight through the torso. This is a violent fucking episode, by the way. This episode, like, held nothing back. But her doing that, it causes him to shoot the gun, and we think that he missed everybody at first, but then all of a sudden you hear Carl say, "Dad," and turn around, and we see that his eye has been blown out from the gun, just like in the comic books. So they're sticking really close to the comic books in this episode, which I really love. So Rick picks up Carl, who passes out on the ground, and he and Michonne start booking it back to the infirmary, the little triage unit they have set up. At this point, we cut back to Denise and the Wolf, which is an awesome hipster band name. If anybody out there wants to use it, feel free, it's on me. But out of nowhere, Carol shows up at the same spot that Denise and the Wolf are at, and just shoots the Wolf, who at this point seems to be kind of soft for Denise, like he's trying to help her. So that was a weird character change out of nowhere that I didn't like. But Carol shoots him in the chest, and where the fuck has she been this entire time? I'm lost as to. Did I miss that they showed where she was at in the whole setup of all the characters? If I did, just let me know. But I think they did just miss her in the whole setup of where everyone was at. But Carol shoots the Wolf, and Denise is like, fuck him. And she just takes off back to the triage unit and leaves him, which, can you blame her? This guy's awful, so I don't know why she would have any soft feelings for him. And in the triage unit, there's a little bit of the community is inside of there for safety, and they see Rick, Michonne running with Carl in her arms, and Denise has this little freak out because she's she's only been in the show for, I think in the timeline of the show, she's only been a character that we've known for a few days at this point. Because you gotta remember, the last half of the season, the previous half of the season took place in this scattered timeline that showed where everybody was all the time. So one episode would be devoted to Daryl, and another episode would be devoted to Rick, and so on. So the whole first half of the season took place over maybe a few days. And in that few days, we learned that Denise was the new doctor, and that she wasn't sure of herself because I think she quit medical school. I'm not sure, because she couldn't handle blood and stuff like that. So she has a little panic attack when she sees Rick running up with Carl, who has just been shot in the face. But then she pulls her shit together and starts working on him. And then Rick goes into psycho mode like he did after his wife died. Was it Lori? After Lori died in the show, he goes into psycho mode and just goes out and decides he's going to go berserker on all the zombies. And Michonne follows, and the entire town is looking out their windows at this, and because they're inside their houses for safety, they all see him doing this and trying to save the town, and they decide they can't just let him do it, so they have to help him. So they all come out and start killing. In the meantime, Denise, who previously was not a skilled doctor, afraid of blood, afraid of everything pretty much, has somehow shot a victim of a gun wound to the head and saved his life because he's still alive. That I didn't like how they wrapped that up so nice and neatly. You can't just become a doctor who can save a gunshot victim who has a gunshot to the head just because you're determined to be a useful part of the team. That's not the way that skill works. But whatever, it's The Walking Dead, and you have to give it some leeway because you have to understand that they are not the best storytellers in the world. They're more out there to entertain idiots who are easily satiated by simple plot lines. So you have to keep that in mind and suspend any disbelief you have when you're watching this show. But back outside, Enid and Glenn show up to save Maggie. And at this point, I almost threw my remote at the TV because it gets to be very heavy because it looks like Glenn is about to die. And when I saw that, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Because last season, if you remember, they took about 3 episodes of time just to leave us in suspense. And I feel like if they would have killed him right there, that would have been for nothing. Like that's my big point with the show. They trick you all the time just so they have a reason to meander and to waste time to fill the season. And if they would have killed Glenn right there, then I would have really felt like that's what they were doing last season. They knew that they weren't going to kill him, but they wanted to keep people hooked. And that would have been just so fucked up. But luckily, that's not what they did. Luckily, as happens in a story like this, I think it was Abraham and Sasha were on top of the wall and blasted the zombies that were about to kill him, saving his life. Then they opened the door to the community, drive the gas truck that they were in inside. Somehow, all of the other zombies just ignore that they're doing this. They have enough time to pull up to the lake in the middle of the town, open up the valve that lets all the gas out, and dump that into the pond in the middle. Then Daryl gets back on top of the tanker, and did he really need to... In a world where there's obviously a lot of dangers that you could use high-powered weaponry in, I will never in my life understand why, instead of just taking a lighter and lighting the gas to light the pond, he had to use the rocket launcher to ignite this pond of gas now to attract the zombies. Also, I don't know how he knew that this would attract the zombies. Like, I don't know how he knew that this wouldn't blow the whole town up. What if this pond was somehow created to a sewer system that just exploded the entire... So he was taking a lot of... I feel like this was it was a cool looking scene, but I feel like they were just taking a lot of liberties with looking cool as opposed to making any sense at all. But because they wasted a really high-powered weapon, I don't understand why you would ever do that. But it happened, and we just have to move on with it. That big fire in the pond attracts all of the zombies like moths to a flame, and they come and they just burn themselves alive. Well, burn themselves to where they're no longer functioning as zombies. And that's it. That's where they left us. Overall, it was a great episode with a lot of problems, but a lot of problems in an episode of The Walking Dead is better than a typical episode of theirs, which is pretty much a train wreck from beginning to end. But it was good. It had plenty of action. It was crazy gory. There was one scene where it was just like a montage of people destroying zombies' heads, that like for a good 30 to 45 seconds, just zombies being killed left and right as fast as they could. But this is exactly how seasons of this show always start. So I'm trying not to get too hyped up about this thing, because I have full faith that they will fuck this up, and next week will be just as slow as ever. But as for now, just like every season, I'm in because it always has a good first episode that's intriguing. Do I have anything else I want to say about the show? No, you know what? I think I am going to end it there today. This is a bit long, but like I said, I didn't give you one on Monday, so this is a little longer for you if you wanted to stick around for the whole thing. If you have any thoughts on anything I've said here today, please feel free to get a hold of me on Facebook or Twitter at Mainstream Geek, or email me at jason@mainstreamgeek.com. Let me know if you agree, if you disagree, if you hate me, if you love me. Let me know anything. Just give me a little shout out. As always, please be sure that you're subscribed to my feed on iTunes. If you are already subscribed, please leave me a little rating. Help me go up in the charts. I can't stress enough how much that helps me out. If you don't care for doing things the Apple way, I've still got you covered. You can hear me on Stitcher, YouTube, Spreaker, or you can visit mainstreamgeek.com and you can find specialized Android apps to subscribe to the show on. That's all I've got for you today. So I will see you again on Friday. Until then, keep it geeky!